Today we have a fire IEM. This is a audiophile competitive gaming IEM. This thing can do basically everything. This thing is tuned so well. And this is probably my favorite thing Kiwi Ears has put out besides the quintet over here at the price of $90 and everything else I've heard. This thing is definitely a very, very high recommendation for me. And this is a different type of driver configuration that I've actually seen before. So this is the Kiwi Ears Canta. It has one DD driver and then two planar drivers. So there's no other like BA drivers or anything. So it is a little bit more unusual because you usually see some type of BA drivers and they're playing the mid-range. But here they opted for just, a dynamic driver and two planar drivers. And I think they did a really wonderful job in giving this essentially a really, really nice thumpy bass with that dynamic driver, but then having the detail you get from the planar driver, and surprisingly really well tuned. And they call this a vocal centric IEM, and I definitely agree with that. Like if you like vocals, male, female, it does a very, very, very good job with it. The thing I notice about this thing is like if you actually listen to it, it has definitely placed the crossovers in the best places. Like when I'm listening to the mid-range, it sounds really like forward. It doesn't really sound like it's missing anything. And, it actually sounds better than Quintet, which is over $230. So this is like almost like, 1.5 times more expensive than the Canta. So it actually does seem like they tuned this to be mid-range focused. And so this is definitely probably the strong suit of this. I feel like that tuning also leans really well into gaming because when I was playing, competitive games like Valorant and stuff like that, I could really hear the footsteps very clearly. So really, this one is definitely a banger. And yeah, so if we do a deep dive into this IEM, you can see that it has this kind of alloy, kind of metal on the outside, and then it has this kind of plastic backing that isn't see-through. And then it has the black tips that I'm using. These are actually my favorite tips. They come with 3 different tips, but I feel like the black tips give you the most amount of treble. But if you find them, too treble forward, you can use the other tips that they come with. So they have, some other ones. So they have these red ones. These ones are kind of in the mid range of like they kind of, lower down the treble, it's less forward, but you can still hear the mid-range really well. So they're pretty balanced sounding. And then they come with these white tips over here that just kind of, in my opinion, take out most of the kind of treble and make it pretty bassy sounding. So if you want a darker sound, then you would go with this one, with the black ones being the most detailed oriented one. So I definitely recommend that. And then this comes with this black cable, which, it's not really anything special. It's just like a normal black cable. I have no complaints about it. It just kind of fits aesthetic. It's, a budget kind of cable. And yeah, so this is kind of the Canta. Really, the most notable features are in how many tips they give you. They give you 3 different tips, as well as just the sound and all the stuff they pack inside, which is the good drivers, giving you a lot of detail and that bass. So moving on to, I guess, the tuning and the sound. So if you can see, it's pretty much like very target here, and it's very, very good. Actually, if you look at the measurements, it almost measures exactly the same as a quintet, which is pretty interesting, but measurements don't really tell you everything about it. That's the most interesting part. Like if I take a look at the bass between this Canta and the quintet, they're very similar, but when you actually listen to it, the quintet just sounds like it has better sub bass definition. It is a more expensive IEM, so it definitely has lower lows. But the Canta, honestly, compared to everything else on this table, like we have the Forteza, which is like about $60. Even compared to Kiwi's Ears Quartet, it has better sub bass in the Canta. So really, the Canta really is the most exceptional one I've heard around the $100 price point. And I also have the single low, but I'm too lazy to take it out. But the single low, honestly, this is way better than single low. I feel like a lot of people are hyped for that one, and that one didn't really achieve their dreams. But honestly, if you want a nice bass, sub bass as well, the Canta has that with the mid-range just being so full. Like when you listen to vocals on this, they're very forward, very present. It feels like you're in the same room as them. So it's really, really amazing how it's able to achieve that. And, as I review more and more IEMs, I feel like these companies are either more, purposeful where they put the crossovers, but it really sounds like the crossover is not in the mid-range or the upper mid-range. They definitely put it somewhere else or they just did a much better job at syncing the sounds together because they're multi-drivers, but it sounds just very, very natural sounding. So I feel like these companies are getting really, really good at doing that. And at these price points of, $90, it sounds really cohesive type of sound for a multi-driver IEM. So I'm really surprised by that. And so really the Canta really just pulls ahead. And then when it comes to the treble, I feel like in these black tips, for me, I kind of hear a little bit of like extra, like, emphasis in the upper treble, but it's really not that bad. I don't really hear any like sibilants or anything like that, but it could get slightly hot sometimes. But honestly, it kind of depends on the song you're listening to. But really, I feel like the treble is pretty well controlled. And then when it gets to the treble of this, I found the treble to be pretty well controlled, honestly. I didn't hear anything kind of nasty sounding, spiky sounding. So the treble is pretty nice, very detailed. A little bit forward, but, a very, very nice sound. So really, let's talk about soundstage and imaging. So I like to play, Valorant and games to kind of test that, as well as just listening to music for kind of the soundstage and how far they sound. The soundstage, it's pretty much still an IEM, nothing too different. So soundstage is about average, nothing too special. It has pretty good like depth to it. I can tell how far things are, how close things are. But the imaging is the thing that really surprised me on this. I think if you want to play competitive gaming, I give this thing a pretty high score. I'd probably give it like almost a 9. Like that's pretty high up there. Like this thing is really, really good. Like if you want to play games on this, like I definitely recommend this. Even just story mode games, because the tuning's so good. If you want, your explosions and everything like that, it really has you covered. Especially with the vocal centric tuning, your dialogues in games are also going to sound really, really good. So really, this thing just kind of slaps. It does really everything, honestly. The treble might be a little bit more forward at the black tips, but they give you literally 2 other tips, so you can put on the other ones if you don't want your treble to be as forward. So really, when it comes to tuning, you have some choices to fine tune it. I'm trying to think of some cons. I guess, it's a pretty standard black looking type of IEM. I feel like the Forteza is like my favorite looking IEM, if that matters at all. So this one is a little bit more modern, a little bit more muted, I guess, in the looks. But really, I can't really come up with anything else besides that. So the Canta really is honestly a very, very good IEM. I easily recommend this over like basically anything they had under 100, even other IEMs at 100. This is a very, very good choice as well. I think it's unique, like I said, with 2 planar drivers, no BAs at all, and then the dynamic driver playing it. Also, interesting to mention is their new Canta comes with this like leather or faux leather type of case. It actually looks much better than their older one, which was just kind of, a normal, I guess, plastic or type of case. This is the faux leather. It just makes it look a little bit more premium, and it looks nicer than even their more expensive product that's like $250. So that's kind of a nice addition they have. So once again, I want to thank Linsol for sending this out for review. If you guys are interested in purchasing any of these IEMs, I'll leave you links to Linsol, to help support my channel and support them for sending this out for me, which would be nice. Anyways, I hope this video helped you guys. Please like and subscribe down below. Helps my videos out, and I'll see you guys in the next video.